When I saw the bruises on my twin sister's arms, I didn't call the police. I didn't cry. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Go hide. I'll take your place." She thought I was crazy. Her husband thought I was her. What I did next shocked everyone. Before we begin, write in the comments what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy watching. The doorbell rang on a Tuesday afternoon, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel and walked to the front door, annoyed because I was in the middle of making lunch. When I opened it, my heart stopped. Emma stood there, my twin sister, my identical twin sister who I hadn't seen in 2 years. She looked like me, but she didn't look like herself. Her hair was pulled back tight in a ponytail, and she wore a long-sleeved cardigan even though it was the middle of July and the heat was unbearable. Her face was pale, thinner than I remembered, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Emma?" I whispered. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Lily." I stood there for a second, frozen, and then I stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. She went stiff in my arms. Not just tense, she actually flinched like I'd hurt her. I pulled back immediately, searching her face. What's wrong?" "Nothing." She looked away. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside and let her walk past me into the living room. She moved carefully like every step hurt, and she sat down on the edge of the couch like she was afraid to take up too much space. I closed the door and sat down next to her, studying her face. We were identical twins. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same freckles across our noses. People used to say they couldn't tell us apart. But right now, looking at her, I saw a stranger. "Emma, what's going on?" I asked quietly. "Why haven't you called me back? Why haven't you answered any of my messages?" She stared at her hands in her lap. "I've been busy." "Busy for 2 years?" "Daniel and we've just been focused on our life together. You know how it is." Daniel, her husband, the man she'd married 3 years ago after a whirlwind romance that had swept her off her feet. I'd never liked him. There was something about the way he looked at her, the way he always had his hand on her arm or her shoulder, like he was holding her in place. "I don't know how it is," I said, "because you won't talk to me." She finally looked at me, and I saw something flash in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or sadness, but then it was gone, replaced by that fake smile again. "I'm here now," she said softly. I wanted to push, to demand answers, but I could see how fragile she was. So instead, I reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were cold. "I've missed you," I said. Her lip trembled, and for a second I thought she was going to cry. But then she squeezed my hand and nodded. We sat there in silence for a few minutes, and then I noticed something. Her sleeve had ridden up slightly when I'd grabbed her hand, and there was a purple mark on her wrist. A bruise. My stomach dropped. "Emma," I said slowly, "what happened to your wrist?" She pulled her hand back immediately and tugged her sleeve down. "Nothing. I just bumped it." "Bumped it on what?" "The kitchen counter. I'm clumsy." I didn't believe her. I reached for her arm before she could stop me, and I pushed her sleeve up. "Lily, don't." But I'd already seen it. Bruises, all up her forearm. Some were old and yellow, some were fresh and purple, and some were in between, green and brown and ugly. They were everywhere, overlapping, like someone had grabbed her over and over again. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Emma!" She pulled her arm away and stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" My voice was shaking now. "I told you, I'm just clumsy. I fall a lot." "You don't fall a lot. You never fell when we were kids. You were the coordinated one." She turned away from me, staring out the window. "People change." I stood up and walked over to her, forcing her to look at me. "Did Daniel do this to you?" Her face went white. "No." "Emma, no," she said again, louder this time. "He didn't. And even if—" She stopped herself, breathing hard. "You can't say anything. You can't do anything. Please, Lily." "Why not?" "Because he'll know." Her voice broke on the last word. "He'll know I told someone and it'll get worse. It always gets worse when I tell someone." My heart felt like it was being crushed in my chest. Emma, we have to get you out of there. We have to. No. She shook her head frantically. I can't leave. You don't understand. He'll find me. He always finds me. Then we'll go to the police. The police won't help. They never help. And even if they did, what then? He gets arrested for a few days and then he's out and he's angrier than before. Tears were streaming down her face now. I just I just wanted to see you. I wanted to see my sister one more time before. She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. I pulled her into my arms, and this time she didn't flinch. She collapsed against me, sobbing, and I held her tight while my mind raced. I couldn't let her go back to him. I couldn't let this continue. And then suddenly an idea came to me. It was crazy, dangerous, but it might be the only way to protect her. I pulled back and looked at her tear-stained face, my face, and I made a decision. Emma, I said quietly, sit down. I need to tell you something. She wiped her eyes and sat back down on the couch, looking at me with confusion. I sat across from her and leaned forward. I have a plan, but you have to trust me. What kind of plan? I took a deep breath. I'm going to take your place. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. What? I'm going to pretend to be you. I'll go back to Daniel and you'll stay here. Hidden. Safe. Lily, that's insane. You can't. We're identical twins, I said. We used to fool everyone when we were kids. Our parents, our teachers, our friends, no one could ever tell us apart. That was different. We were kids. The principle is the same. I'll cut my hair like yours. You'll teach me his routines, his habits, everything I need to know. And while I'm there, I'll gather evidence, proof of what he's been doing to you, enough to put him away for good. She was shaking her head, but I could see the tiny spark of hope in her eyes. It won't work, she whispered. He'll know. He won't, not if we're careful. And what if he hurts you? I reached out and took both of her hands in mine. Then at least it's me and not you. At least you'll be safe. She started crying again, but this time it was different. This time I saw something other than fear in her eyes. Relief. Okay, she whispered finally. Okay. Emma stared at me like I'd just suggested we jump off a bridge together. 2 weeks, I said again, keeping my voice steady. That's all I need. 2 weeks to get inside, gather evidence, and build a case strong enough that he can't touch you ever again. She was still shaking her head, pacing back and forth across my living room. Lily, this is insane. You don't understand what he's like. You don't know what you're getting into. Then tell me. Teach me everything I need to know. She stopped pacing and turned to face me. It's not that simple. Daniel, he notices everything. The way I walk, the way I talk, the way I fold the towels. If you get one thing wrong, we're identical twins, I interrupted. We used to switch places all the time when we were kids. Remember? We fooled Mom and Dad for an entire week once. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. That was different. We were 12. The principle is the same. We look exactly alike. We sound exactly alike. And I'm a fast learner. She sat down on the couch and put her head in her hands. What if he hurts you? I sat down next to her and put my hand on her shoulder. Then at least I'll know what you've been going through. And I'll have proof. Photos, recordings, whatever it takes to make sure he pays for what he's done. He's careful, she whispered. He doesn't leave marks where people can see, and he never does anything in front of witnesses. That's why I need to be inside, living with him, watching him, waiting for him to slip up. She looked at me with those hollow, frightened eyes, and I saw the weight of everything she'd been carrying alone for years. I'm so tired, she said softly. I'm so tired of being afraid all the time. Then let me do this. Let me help you. She was quiet for a long moment, and then she nodded slowly. Okay, but if anything goes wrong, if he figures it out, you have to get out immediately. Promise me. I promise. She took a shaky breath. Where do we start? I stood up and walked to the hallway mirror, pulling her with me. We stood side by side looking at our reflections. We looked almost identical already, but there were small differences. My hair was longer, falling past my shoulders, while hers was cut just above them. I wore casual clothes, jeans and a t-shirt, while she was dressed in that long-sleeved cardigan and a modest skirt. First, we need to make me look exactly like you, I said. Hair, clothes, everything. She nodded. I'll get my scissors. And that 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my kitchen with a towel around my shoulders while Emma cut my hair. Each snip felt like a commitment, a point of no return. When she was done, she stepped back and looked at me. There, she said quietly. Now we really are identical. I looked in the mirror she held up and barely recognized myself. The shorter hair changed my whole face somehow, made me look older, more tired, more like Emma. Over the next few hours, she taught me everything. We started with the basics: Daniel's morning routine, what he liked for breakfast, how he took his coffee, black, no sugar, in the blue mug on the left side of the cabinet. He's very particular about his coffee, Emma said, her voice tight. If it's not exactly right, he gets angry. Angry how? She looked away. He doesn't yell. That's the worst part. He just gets very quiet and very cold, and then later, she stopped herself. Just make sure the coffee is right. I wrote everything down in a notebook, filling page after page with details. What time he left for work, what time he came home, which drawer held his socks, which side of the bed he slept on. He doesn't like it when I'm on my phone, Emma said at one point. He says I should be paying attention to him when he's home. Does he check your phone? She nodded. Sometimes, so don't text anyone he doesn't know, and definitely don't text me. How will we communicate? We won't. Not for the 2 weeks. It's safer that way. As the hours passed, I started to see a clearer picture of the man my sister had married. Everything had to be his way. Everything had to be controlled. And if it wasn't, there were consequences. What are his triggers? I asked. What sets him off? Emma's hands were shaking as she spoke. Talking back, questioning him, not having dinner ready on time, looking at other men, smiling too much, not smiling enough. Her voice broke. Everything sets him off, Lily. There's no way to win. I reached across and took her hand. Then we're doing the right thing. She taught me the tone of voice I needed to use around him. Soft, agreeable, never challenging. She taught me how to apologize even when I wasn't wrong, how to make myself smaller, how to disappear. There's a look he gets, she said, right before he loses his temper. His jaw clenches and his eyes go dark and he gets very still. When you see that look, you apologize immediately. You don't wait. You don't explain. You just apologize. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw the years of fear etched into every line of her face. This wasn't just about bruises on her arms. This was about a woman who'd been systematically broken down piece by piece until she didn't know how to exist without fear. I'm going to make him pay for this, I said quietly. She squeezed my hand. Just be careful, please. That night we practiced. Emma played Daniel and I played her, and we ran through scenarios over and over again until I could respond without thinking. How to greet him at the door, how to ask about his day, how to stay quiet when he criticized me, how to agree with everything he said. It was exhausting and infuriating, and by the end of it, I wanted to punch something. How do you live like this? I asked. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. You just do. After a while, you forget there was ever any other way. The next morning, Emma brought over a bag of her clothes. Plain, modest, nothing that would draw attention. We spent the day going through them, making sure I knew what to wear and when. She taught me how Daniel liked her to dress. Covered up, professional, like a doll he could control. He picks out my clothes sometimes, she admitted, not meeting my eyes. If he doesn't like what I'm wearing, I have to change. I felt sick, but I kept my expression neutral. Okay, what else? She told me about his friends, the ones I'd have to smile at and pretend to like. She told me about his mother, who called every Sunday and expected Emma to chat for exactly 30 minutes. No more, no less. She told me about the way he tracked her movements, always asking where she'd been, who she'd talked to, what she'd bought at the grocery store. He checks the receipts, she said. Make sure everything matches. By the time evening came, my head was spinning with information, but I felt ready, or as ready as I could be. Emma stayed over that night, sleeping in my guest room. Neither of us slept much. I could hear her crying softly through the wall, and it took everything in me not to go to her. But I knew she needed to let it out, all the pain and fear she'd been holding in for so long. The next morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, wearing Emma's clothes, with Emma's hair, looking at a reflection that wasn't quite mine anymore. Emma stood behind me, and for a moment, we just looked at each other in the mirror. I can't tell us apart, she said softly. That's the point. She handed me her wedding ring, and I slipped it onto my finger. It felt heavy, like a chain. His number is programmed in this phone, she said, handing me her cell. He'll expect you to text him when you get home. Just say, I'm home, and nothing else. I took the phone and nodded. Lily, she said, and her voice was shaking. Thank you for doing this, for believing me. I turned around and hugged her tight. I'm your sister. I'll always believe you. When we pulled apart, she was crying again. I'm scared. I know, but you're going to stay here and you're going to be safe, and in 2 weeks, this is all going to be over. She nodded, wiping her tears. I picked up my bag, Emma's bag now, and walked to the door. Before I left, I turned back one more time. Emma? Yeah? Lock the door behind me. Don't answer it for anyone except me. She nodded, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Hope. I walked out the door and got into Emma's car, a small sedan that Daniel had bought for her. I started the engine and pulled out of the driveway, heading toward the address Emma had given me, toward Daniel's house, toward the next 2 weeks of my life. As I drove, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror, and for a second, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. But I knew exactly what I was about to do. The house was in a quiet neighborhood with perfect lawns and white picket fences. It looked like something out of a magazine, charming, safe, normal. Nothing about it screamed danger. I pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. This was it. No turning back now. I grabbed Emma's purse from the passenger seat and walked up to the front door, using the key she'd given me. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The door opened smoothly and I stepped inside. The house was spotless. Everything was in its place. Magazines stacked neatly on the coffee table, throw pillows arranged perfectly on the couch, not a single thing out of order. It felt more like a showroom than a home. And sitting on that perfect couch, scrolling through his phone, was Daniel. He didn't look up when I walked in. He was handsome, I had to give him that. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair styled just right, and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from stone. He wore a crisp button-down shirt and dark slacks, even though it was Saturday. Everything about him was controlled, precise, perfect. I stood there for a moment, waiting for him to acknowledge me. Emma had warned me about this, how he sometimes ignored her on purpose just to make her feel small. Finally, he glanced up. His eyes were blue, cold, and assessing. They swept over me once, then went back to his phone. Where were you? His voice was calm, casual, but there was an edge underneath it. I'd practiced this. Emma had made me rehearse it a dozen times. I went to see my mom, I said softly, keeping my eyes down the way Emma had taught me. She wasn't feeling well. He didn't respond right away. He just kept scrolling through his phone, making me stand there in the doorway like a child waiting for permission to enter. Your mom, he said finally. You didn't tell me you were going. I'm sorry, I should have asked first. The words tasted like poison in my mouth, but I forced them out. He looked at me again, longer this time, and I felt his gaze like ice on my skin. Yes, you should have. Then he went back to his phone, dismissing me. I walked past him into the kitchen, setting Emma's purse down on the counter. My hands were shaking and I clenched them into fists to stop it. 2 weeks, I just had to survive 2 weeks. I opened the refrigerator, pretending to look for something, but really I was just trying to calm down. The fridge was organized like everything else in this house. Labeled containers, everything in neat rows, nothing out of place. What are you making for dinner? Daniel called from the living room. I closed the fridge and took a breath. Emma had told me he expected dinner at 6:30 every night. It was 5 now. Chicken and vegetables, I called back. It was one of the meals Emma had taught me how to make exactly the way he liked it. Good. I started pulling out ingredients, moving around the kitchen that should have felt familiar, but didn't. Every drawer I opened, every cabinet I searched, I had to remind myself where things were based on Emma's instructions. Daniel came into the kitchen while I was chopping vegetables. He didn't say anything, just leaned against the counter and watched me. I could feel his eyes on me, studying every movement, and it took everything in me not to look up, not to meet his gaze. "How's your mother?" he asked. "She's okay, just a cold." "You were gone for 3 hours." My heart skipped. We talked for a while. I made her some soup. He was quiet for a moment, and I kept my eyes on the cutting board, on the steady rhythm of the knife slicing through carrots. "Yep, you know I don't like it when you leave without telling me," he said, his voice still calm, still controlled. "We've talked about this." "I know, I'm sorry. Are you?" I finally looked up at him, and that's when I saw it, the look Emma had warned me about. His jaw was tight, his eyes had gone dark, and there was a stillness to him that was more frightening than if he'd been yelling. "I'm sorry," I said again, softer this time, letting my voice shake a little. "It won't happen again." He stared at me for another long moment, and then something shifted in his expression. The coldness melted into something that almost looked like affection, but wasn't quite. He stepped forward and put his hand on my cheek, gentle, almost tender. "I know you're sorry, sweetheart. I just worry about you when you're gone. You understand that, don't you?" His touch made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to lean into it, to give him the response he wanted. "I understand." "Good." He kissed my forehead, and it took everything in me not to pull away. "I love you." The words felt like a lie, but I said them back anyway. "I love you too." He smiled, that perfect, charming smile that probably fooled everyone who met him. And then he walked back into the living room. I stood there in the kitchen, my hands shaking again, and went back to making dinner. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Dinner was ready at 6:30 exactly. We ate at the dining table in silence, him reading something on his tablet while I picked up my food. He complimented the chicken, told me I'd done a good job, and I thanked him quietly. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen while he watched television. Every movement I made, I could feel him aware of it, even though he wasn't looking at me directly. It was like living under a microscope. At 9 o'clock, he turned off the TV. "I'm going to bed." My stomach dropped. This was the part I'd been dreading. I followed him upstairs to the bedroom, a room that was just as perfect and controlled as the rest of the house. The bed was made with military precision, the dresser was free of clutter, and there wasn't a single personal item anywhere. Daniel started unbuttoning his shirt, and I went into the bathroom to change into the pajamas Emma had left for me. Simple cotton pants and a t-shirt, nothing revealing. When I came back out, he was already in bed waiting. I climbed in on my side, Emma's side, and lay there stiffly, staring at the ceiling. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then I felt him move closer, his hand reaching across the space between us to rest on my hip. Every muscle in my body went rigid. "You're tense," he said, his voice soft in the darkness. "Just tired," I whispered. His hand moved up to my waist, pulling me closer. "Come here." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shove him away and run out of this house and never look back. But I thought about Emma, about the bruises on her arms, about the fear in her eyes, and I made myself relax. I turned toward him, letting him pull me against his chest, his arms wrapping around me like a cage. "That's better," he murmured into my hair. I closed my eyes and focused on breathing, on staying calm, on remembering why I was doing this. His hand started moving again, sliding up my side, and I felt panic rising in my throat. "Daniel," I said softly, "I'm really tired tonight. Can we just sleep?" His hand stopped moving. For a moment, I thought he was going to get angry, but then he sighed and kissed the top of my head. "Okay, sweetheart, get some rest." He settled back into his pillow, his arms still around me, and within minutes, his breathing evened out. But I lay there awake for hours, trapped in his embrace, counting down the days until I could get out of this place. 2 weeks. 13 days left. I could do this. I had to. The first 3 days in Daniel's house taught me more about cruelty than I'd learned in my entire life. He didn't hit me. He didn't have to. Daniel's weapon of choice was control, wrapped in silence and delivered with surgical precision. He could destroy you without ever raising his hand, and he was very, very good at it. I learned his patterns quickly because I had to. He woke up every morning at 6:15 exactly. Not 6:14, not 6:16, 6:15. He showered for exactly 12 minutes, dressed in clothes he'd laid out the night before, and expected his coffee waiting for him on the kitchen counter at 6:45. If the coffee wasn't ready, he didn't say anything. He just looked at me with those cold blue eyes, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. On the second morning, I handed him his coffee at 6:46. 1 minute late because I'd been trying to find the right travel mug in the cabinet. He took the cup from my hand, looked at his watch, and then looked at me. "You're late," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, I couldn't find—" "I don't want excuses, Emma. I want punctuality." He dumped the entire cup of coffee into the sink, scalding hot liquid splashing everywhere, and walked out the door without another word. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the brown stains spreading across the white sink, and understood. This was how he operated: small punishments for small infractions, designed to keep me constantly on edge, constantly trying to be perfect. The next morning, his coffee was ready at 6:44. He didn't thank me. He just took it and left. I spent those first days watching him the way a scientist watches a dangerous animal in captivity. I noted everything: the way his mood darkened if I spoke too loudly, the way his jaw clenched if I forgot to put his briefcase exactly where he wanted it, the way he used silence like a weapon, refusing to speak to me for hours as punishment for infractions I didn't even know I'd committed. On the third day, I was standing in the kitchen making lunch when he came up behind me. "Your posture is terrible," he said. I straightened immediately. "Sorry." "Don't apologize. Just fix it." His hand came to rest on my lower back, pressing hard, forcing my spine into the position he wanted. "Like this. You look sloppy when you slouch." I held the position even after he walked away, my back aching, rage burning in my chest. That afternoon, he corrected the way I answered the phone. Too casual, apparently. I needed to sound more professional, more put together. That evening, he corrected the way I was sitting on the couch. Legs crossed at the ankle, not at the knee. Hands folded in my lap, not on the armrest. By bedtime, I felt like a puppet whose strings he was constantly adjusting, trying to make me move exactly the way he wanted. But I didn't break. I just watched. I learned. And I waited. On Friday night, Daniel told me we were having dinner with his friends. "Marcus and Julie," he said. "They're important to me, so I need you on your best behavior." "Of course," I said quietly. "Wear the blue dress, the one with the sleeves, and do something with your hair. You look tired." I wanted to tell him I looked tired because I'd been living in a constant state of stress for 4 days, but instead I just nodded. "Okay." The restaurant was expensive, the kind of place with white tablecloths and waiters who spoke in hushed tones. Marcus and Julie were already there when we arrived, sitting at a corner table. Marcus stood up to greet us, all smiles and firm handshakes. He was tall, confident, with the kind of easy charm that probably served him well in business. Julie was beautiful, perfectly styled hair, designer dress, the kind of woman who looked like she belonged in a magazine. "Emma," she said warmly, pulling me into a hug. "It's so good to see you. It's been too long." I smiled and hugged her back, even though I'd never met this woman before in my life. "I know. I'm sorry we've been so busy." "Don't apologize," Marcus said, clapping Daniel on the shoulder. "This guy keeps you locked up at home, doesn't he? Can't blame him, though. If I had a wife as beautiful as you, I'd want to keep her to myself, too." Everyone laughed. Daniel put his arm around my waist, pulling me close. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me," he said, and he sounded so sincere that for a moment, even I almost believed him. We sat down and the conversation flowed easily. Daniel was charming, funny, attentive. He asked Marcus about work, complimented Julie's dress, told stories that had everyone at the table laughing. His hand never left my leg under the table, though. Possessive, controlling, a constant reminder that I belonged to him. When the food came, Daniel ordered for me without asking what I wanted. Salmon, no sauce, steamed vegetables on the side. She's watching her figure, he said with a smile. I wasn't. Emma wasn't, but no one questioned it. I watched him perform all night, this perfect version of himself that he showed to the world. The successful businessman, the devoted husband, the good friend. Everyone at that table thought he was wonderful. And I realized with absolute clarity that this was why Emma had stayed for so long. Because when you told people the truth about a man like Daniel, they didn't believe you. How could they? He was so charming, so normal, so perfect. When we got home that night, the mask came off immediately. I'd set the table for dinner earlier before we left, planning to make pasta when we got back. But Daniel walked into the kitchen, saw the pot I'd left on the stove, and his expression darkened. You didn't clean this before we left? I was going to use it when we got home. I thought, I don't care what you thought. He picked up the pot and dropped it into the sink with a loud clatter. This kitchen looks like a disaster. It didn't. It looked normal. But I'd learned by now that facts didn't matter to Daniel. Only control mattered. I'm sorry, I said. I'll clean it now. Forget it. He grabbed the plate I'd set out for dinner, just a plate sitting on the counter, and threw it into the sink. It shattered, pieces of ceramic flying everywhere. Then he walked away, leaving me standing there surrounded by broken dishes. I waited until I heard the TV turn on in the living room. Then I pulled out my phone. Not Emma's phone, but the second one I'd hidden in my purse, and took photos of the broken plate, of the way he'd left the kitchen, of everything. I'd been doing this since the first day, taking photos, making notes, recording conversations when he didn't know. Every cruel comment, every silent treatment, every small act of control and punishment. I was building a case piece by piece, and by the time I was done, Daniel wouldn't have anywhere to hide. I cleaned up the broken plate, washed the pot, and put everything away. Then I pulled out the small notebook I'd been keeping hidden in my purse and wrote down everything that had happened that night. The way he'd ordered my food without asking, the way he'd thrown the plate, the exact words he'd used. When I was done, I hid the notebook back in my purse and went into the living room. Daniel was watching a football game, beer in hand, looking completely relaxed. Are you going to stand there all night? He asked without looking at me. No, sorry. I sat down on the other end of the couch as far from him as possible and stared at the TV without seeing it. 10 days left. By day 6, something inside me shifted. I stopped being afraid. Maybe it was because I knew this was temporary. Maybe it was because every cruel word, every silent punishment, every controlling gesture was just more evidence I could use against him. Or maybe I was just tired of pretending to be small. Whatever the reason, I stopped flinching. It happened on Tuesday evening. Daniel came home from work in a bad mood. I could tell from the way he slammed the car door, from the heavy footsteps on the front porch. He walked in without greeting me, threw his briefcase on the chair, and went straight to the kitchen. I was cooking dinner, stirring pasta sauce on the stove. What's for dinner? He asked, his voice already edged with irritation. Pasta with marinara and salad. Pasta again? He opened the refrigerator, staring into it like he was looking for something better. We had pasta 3 days ago. That was spaghetti, this is penne. He turned to look at me and I saw his jaw clench. That look Emma had warned me about, the one that meant I was supposed to apologize, to back down, to make myself smaller, but I didn't. I just kept stirring the sauce, keeping my voice calm and even. If you want something else, I can make you a sandwich. I don't want a sandwich. I want a wife who can plan meals properly. The old me, or rather the Emma he thought I was, would have apologized, would have offered to make something different, would have scrambled to fix a problem that wasn't even real. Instead, I turned off the stove and looked at him directly. The pasta will be ready in 10 minutes. If that doesn't work for you, you're welcome to cook something yourself. The silence that followed was so thick I could feel it pressing against my skin. Daniel stared at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. His eyes narrowed, studying my face, and I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out what was different, what had changed. Excuse me? He said slowly. You heard me. I turned back to the stove, my heart pounding, but my hands steady. I waited for him to explode, to yell, to do something, but he didn't. He just stood there for another moment, then walked out of the kitchen without a word. I exhaled slowly, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. That was the first crack. Small, but significant. Over the next few days, I pushed a little harder. When he criticized the way I'd folded the laundry, I didn't apologize. I just said, it's clean and folded, that's what matters. When he complained that I'd bought the wrong brand of coffee, I shrugged. They were out of your brand. This one was on sale. When he told me my hair looked messy, I looked him in the eyes and said, I like it this way. Each time I watched him struggle with it. He wasn't used to resistance. Emma had been trained over years to comply, to submit, to make herself invisible. But I wasn't Emma, and with every day that passed, I cared less about keeping up the act perfectly. I was here to destroy him, not to survive him. On Thursday night, everything came to a head. I was in the bedroom, changing into pajamas, when Daniel walked in. He'd been quiet all evening, which usually meant he was building up to something. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. I pulled on my shirt and turned to face him. About what? About your attitude lately. My attitude? Yes, your attitude. He crossed his arms, standing between me and the door. You've been different this past week. Distant, disrespectful. I haven't been disrespectful. Don't interrupt me when I'm talking. I bit back the response I wanted to give and waited. You've been challenging me, he continued, talking back, not following the routines we've established, and I want to know why. I'm just tired, Daniel. I've had a long week. That's not an excuse to forget your place in this marriage. My place? Like I was an object, a possession, something he could position wherever he wanted. And where's my place? I asked, keeping my voice level. His eyes darkened. You know exactly where it is, and if you've forgotten, maybe we need to have a more serious conversation about respect. He took a step toward me, and I felt that familiar instinct to back away, to make myself smaller, to de-escalate. But I didn't move. I respect you, I said quietly. But respect goes both ways. What did you just say? You heard me. He moved faster than I expected, his hand shooting out to grab my wrist. His grip was tight, painful, and he pulled me toward him. Don't you dare speak to me like that in my own house, he said, his voice low and dangerous. And that's when something snapped inside me. I yanked my arm away from him with more force than he was expecting. He stumbled back slightly, shocked, and I stood there staring at him, my wrist throbbing but my eyes locked on his. Don't grab me, I said, and my voice didn't shake. For a moment, we just stood there, frozen. I could see the confusion on his face, the way his eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before. Not anger, something else. Fear. He wasn't used to this. He wasn't used to someone standing up to him, someone meeting his aggression with equal force. Emma had never fought back. She'd never looked at him the way I was looking at him right now. Like I wasn't afraid of him at all. Emma, he said slowly, and I heard uncertainty in his voice for the first time. What? He opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head. Never mind, just go to bed. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there alone. I waited until I heard him go downstairs before I moved. Then I grabbed my purse from the closet and pulled out the burner phone I'd been hiding there. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally hitting me. I dialed the number I'd memorized and waited. Emma answered on the second ring. Lily? It's me, I whispered. Are you okay? Did something happen? I'm fine, but I need you to stay hidden a little longer. How much longer? I don't know yet. A week, maybe more. I'm getting close, Emma. I can feel it. He's starting to crack. What do you mean? I looked at my wrist, at the red marks his fingers had left. I mean, he's losing control, and he knows it. And when he loses control completely, that's when I'll have everything I need. Lily, please be careful. If he figures out, he won't, I promise. Just trust me a little longer. She was quiet for a moment. Okay, But if anything goes wrong, I'll get out, I promise. We said goodbye and I ended the call, deleting the record immediately. Then I hid the phone back in my purse and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. My reflection stared back at me. Emma's hair, Emma's clothes, Emma's life. But the look in my eyes was all mine. Determined, angry, unafraid. Daniel thought he was in control. He thought this house, this marriage, this life was all under his command. But I was about to show him just how wrong he was. I opened the bathroom door and went back into the bedroom. Daniel was downstairs, probably drinking and brooding, trying to figure out what had changed. Good. Let him wonder. Let him doubt. Because the next time he tried to control me, I was going to push back even harder. And I wasn't going to stop until I'd torn his perfect life apart. I decided it was time to push him over the edge. Not because I wanted to get hurt, I wasn't stupid, but because I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof of the violence Emma had been living with. The kind of proof that would hold up in court, that would convince his friends and family, that would destroy the perfect image he'd built so carefully. So on day 9, I stopped playing nice. It started in the morning. Daniel's work shirts were hanging in the closet, and normally I would have ironed one the night before. But last night, I deliberately left them all wrinkled. He came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, and opened the closet. I watched from the bed as he pulled out a shirt, saw the wrinkles, and went still. "Emma," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Why isn't my shirt ironed?" "I forgot," I said simply. He turned to look at me. "You forgot?" "Yes. You know I have an important meeting today." "What?" "Then you should have ironed it yourself last night." The silence that followed was electric. I could see the rage building in his eyes, the way his knuckles went white as he gripped the shirt. "What did you just say to me?" "You heard me. I'm not your maid, Daniel. If you need a shirt ironed, iron it yourself." For a moment, I thought he was going to explode right there. But instead, he took a deep breath, threw the shirt on the bed, and grabbed a different one from the closet, one that was slightly less wrinkled. "We're going to talk about this when I get home," he said quietly. "Looking forward to it." He got dressed in silence, his movements sharp and angry, and left without saying goodbye. As soon as I heard his car pull out of the driveway, I got up and hid the small recording device I'd bought into the pocket of the cardigan I was planning to wear that evening. It was voice activated, would record for hours, and was small enough that he'd never notice it. Tonight was the night. I could feel it. I spent the day preparing. I made dinner, chicken, his favorite, but I deliberately overcooked it just slightly. Enough that he'd notice, enough that he'd have something to complain about. I cleaned the house, but I left small things out of place. A magazine on the coffee table instead of in the rack. His mail on the counter instead of on his desk. Tiny infractions that would add up, that would chip away at his control. When 6 o'clock came, I put on the cardigan with the recording device in the pocket and waited. Daniel came home at 6:30, and I could tell from the moment he walked in that he was already angry. His meeting must not have gone well. Perfect. "Dinner's ready," I called from the kitchen. He didn't respond. He just walked past me to the bedroom, and I heard him changing out of his work clothes. When he came back down, he sat at the table without a word. I served him the chicken and vegetables and sat down across from him. He cut into the chicken, took one bite, and put his fork down. "This is overcooked." "Is it?" "You know it is." I shrugged. "I was distracted, sorry." "Distracted by what?" "I don't know, life." His jaw clenched. "Are you trying to be difficult today?" "No, I'm just tired of pretending everything is perfect when it's not." "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked at him directly, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "It means I'm tired, Daniel. I'm tired of walking on eggshells. I'm tired of you criticizing everything I do. I'm tired of you treating me like I'm your employee instead of your wife." The words hung in the air between us, and I watched his face go through a series of changes: shock, confusion, and then anger. Pure, undiluted anger. "How dare you?" he said slowly. "After everything I've given you, this house, this life, everything you have is because of me. I didn't ask for any of it." "Then maybe you should leave." Maybe I should. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward, clattering against the floor. You want to leave? Go ahead. Walk out that door. See how far you get without me. I stood up too, facing him across the table. You think I can't survive without you? You think I need you? I know you do. You're nothing without me, Emma. Nothing. You're wrong. His face went red, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. What did you just say? You heard me. You're wrong. I don't need you. I never needed you. And I'm done pretending that I do. That's when he snapped. He came around the table so fast I barely had time to react. I backed up instinctively and he followed, backing me into the kitchen until I was pressed against the counter with nowhere to go. You think you can talk to me like that? His voice was shaking now, not with fear, but with rage. You think you can disrespect me in my own house? It's my house too. Wrong. This is my house. Everything here is mine, including you. He was standing so close I could feel his breath on my face. His hand came up, and for a second I thought he was going to grab my throat. But I didn't move. I didn't cower. I just stood there, looking him in the eyes, the recording device in my pocket capturing every word. What are you going to do, Daniel? I asked quietly. Are you going to hit me? Is that what comes next? Something flickered in his eyes. Maybe awareness, maybe fear that I was calling his bluff. His hand was still raised, shaking slightly, and I could see him fighting with himself, fighting the urge to do exactly what I'd just accused him of. I should, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I should teach you a lesson you'll never forget. Then do it. Hit me. Show me what kind of man you really are. We stood there frozen, his hand still raised, my heart pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. And then he moved. But not the way I expected. His fist came down hard, but not on me. He slammed it into the wall right next to my head, and the impact was so loud, so violent, that I felt the vibration through the counter behind me. The drywall cracked, pieces of it crumbling to the floor, and when he pulled his fist back, there was a hole the size of a grapefruit in the wall. I didn't flinch. I just kept staring at him, even as my ears rang from the sound, even as dust settled on my shoulders. You're pushing me, he said, his voice ragged. You're pushing me to do something I don't want to do. I'm not pushing you to do anything. You're making your own choices, Daniel. You always have been. He stared at me for another long moment, his chest heaving, his knuckles bleeding from where they'd hit the wall. Then he turned and walked away, grabbing his keys from the counter. I'm going out, he said. And when I come back, you better have remembered who the hell you're married to. The front door slammed behind him, and I heard his car start up and tear out of the driveway. Only then did I let myself breathe. My hands were shaking as I reached into my pocket and stopped the recording. I had it. All of it. His threats, his rage, the sound of his fist hitting the wall. It wasn't a video, but it was something. It was proof. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of the hole in the wall, of his blood on the counter where he'd steadied himself, of everything. Then I texted a friend of Emma's whose number she'd given me, a lawyer named Sarah who'd helped women in situations like this before. I need to meet with you as soon as possible. I have evidence. The response came back within minutes. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, my office. I sent back a confirmation and then just stood there in the kitchen staring at the hole in the wall, at the physical evidence of his violence. He hadn't hit me, but he'd shown me exactly what he was capable of, and that was enough. 5 more days. That's all I needed to gather the rest of the evidence, to build an ironclad case that would keep Emma safe forever. And Daniel had just made it so much easier. After the night Daniel put his fist through the wall, something shifted between us. He knew I wasn't the same Emma he'd married, but he couldn't figure out what had changed. And that uncertainty, that loss of control, was exactly what I needed. So I started playing a different game. It began with small things, subtle things, the kind of things that would make him question his own sanity before he questioned me. On day 10, I moved his car keys from the hook by the door to the kitchen counter. When he couldn't find them in the morning, he tore through the house, swearing under his breath. Emma, where are my keys? I came out of the bedroom tying my robe. On the hook, where they always are. They're not there. I already checked. Let me look. I walked past him to the kitchen and picked up the keys from the counter, holding them up. They're right here. His eyes narrowed. Those weren't there a minute ago. They must have been. I didn't move them. Then how did they get there? I shrugged, giving him a confused, innocent look. Maybe you put them there last night and forgot. I didn't. Well, I didn't touch them. I handed him the keys, my voice soft and concerned. Are you feeling okay? You've seemed stressed lately. He snatched the keys from my hand and left without another word, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Over the next few days, I continued. His favorite coffee mug disappeared and then reappeared in a different cabinet. His phone charger wasn't where he left it. The remote control ended up in the bathroom. Bills that should have been in his desk drawer were on the kitchen table. Each time I played dumb, apologetic, confused. I don't know how that happened. I'm so sorry, I must have moved it by accident. Are you sure you didn't put it there yourself? I watched him slowly unravel, watched the confidence drain out of him as his perfectly controlled world started slipping through his fingers. But I didn't stop there. Daniel kept files at home, financial documents, work papers, things he thought were private. One night while he was asleep, I went through them all. What I found was interesting. Daniel worked as a financial advisor managing investments for wealthy clients. And according to the documents in his home office, some of those investments weren't entirely legal. Nothing massive, just small discrepancies, money moved from one account to another, numbers that didn't quite add up. It was enough. I took photos of everything with my phone, then put the documents back exactly as I'd found them. The next morning, I created a fake email account and sent an anonymous message to Daniel's boss. I think you should look into Daniel Morrison's handling of the Henderson account. Some numbers don't add up. Just thought you should know. I didn't provide proof. I didn't need to. Just planting the seed of doubt was enough. 2 days later, Daniel came home early from work. His face was pale, his tie loosened, and there was a tightness around his eyes I hadn't seen before. What's wrong? I asked, keeping my voice concerned. Nothing, just a long day. Are you sure? You look upset. I said it's nothing, Emma. But it wasn't nothing. I could tell from the way he kept checking his phone, from the way he paced around the living room instead of sitting down. Something at work was bothering him, and he didn't know where it was coming from. Perfect. That same week, his mother called. I answered the phone before he could get to it. Hello, Mrs. Morrison, I said, making my voice sound slightly off. Not quite Emma's usual tone, just different enough to be noticeable. Emma, is that you? You sound strange. Do I? I'm sorry, I think I might be coming down with something. Oh dear. Well, I was calling to check in. I haven't heard from you in a while. Is everything all right with you and Daniel? I paused just long enough to make it awkward. Everything's fine. Why do you ask? No reason. You just seem different lately. Different how? I don't know. Daniel hasn't mentioned anything, but a mother knows these things. Is he treating you well? Of course he is. Daniel's wonderful. But I said it in a way that sounded hollow, like I was reading from a script. And I knew Mrs. Morrison would pick up on it. Well, if you ever need to talk, dear, you know you can call me. Thank you. I'll remember that. After I hung up, I saw Daniel standing in the doorway watching me. What did my mother want? He asked. Just checking in. What did you tell her? Nothing, just that everything's fine. Then why does she keep calling me asking if you're okay? I gave him a confused look. I don't know, maybe she's just worried. You know how mothers are. He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the gears turning in his head, trying to figure out what game I was playing. That night, I took it a step further. While Daniel was in the shower, I went into his email on his laptop. The password was easy to guess. He'd used the same one for everything and changed his Netflix password. Then I changed his Amazon password, then his bank account password. When he tried to log in later that evening, nothing worked. What the hell? He muttered, typing and retyping. What's wrong? I asked from the couch. My passwords aren't working, none of them. That's weird. Maybe you got hacked? All of them at the same time? I shrugged. It happens. You should call the banks tomorrow. He spent the next hour on the phone, resetting passwords, answering security questions, getting more and more frustrated with each call. And through it all, I sat there on the couch reading a book, The Picture of Innocence. By the end of the week, Daniel was a different person. The confident, controlling man I'd met on day one was gone, replaced by someone who jumped at shadows, who checked and rechecked everything, who watched me with suspicious eyes whenever he thought I wasn't looking. His friends started calling, asking if he was okay. One of them mentioned that he seemed off lately. Another said he'd been forgetting things, missing appointments, acting strange. I knew because I heard Daniel's side of those conversations. And I heard the defensiveness in his voice, the way he insisted everything was fine, even though it clearly wasn't. One night, I found him sitting in his office, staring at his computer screen. I walked in with a cup of tea. "Brought you something," I said softly. He didn't look at me. "Thanks." I set the cup down on his desk and turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "Emma." "Yes? What's going on?" I turned back, giving him a confused look. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. Something's different. You're different." "I'm not different. I'm just tired." "It's more than that." He finally looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw fear in his eyes for the first time. Not anger, fear. "It's like you're someone else. Like you're—" He trailed off and I waited, my heart pounding. "Like I'm what?" I prompted. He shook his head. "Never mind. I'm just stressed. Work's been hell." "I know. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do to help?" "No, just leave me alone for a while." I nodded and walked out, closing the door behind me. And as I stood in the hallway, I smiled. Daniel was breaking. The perfect, controlled, manipulative man was coming apart at the seams, and he had no idea it was me pulling the strings. 4 more days. Just 4 more days, and then I'd show him exactly who I really was.